So now that we know what keys are and how keys work, let's go back to that problem we found when we were looking at the perfect fifth and why that B to F thing didn't work correctly. Okay, so let's go back to a key of C major. Okay, so here's a C, and let's just draw out C major. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, there's all my notes in C major. Now, let's look at our fifth. Now, remember, to find a fifth, a perfect fifth, we count up 5 notes in the key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the fifth of C is G, right? Now, that is assuming we're in the key of the first note. And it just so happens that to count up a fifth of all of these notes lands you on a perfect fifth, except for this one. So what we need to do to really figure out what the fifth is count up a fifth in that key. So let's switch to a key of B major. So let's start on B and go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now I'm in the key of B major, okay? So if I count up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I end on F sharp. So the fifth of B is F sharp. But when we count up a fifth of B in the key of C major, we end on F natural. This is a thing you'll find, and it's unique to the 7th tone of the scale. If now that I'm in the key of B major, if I count up a fifth from A sharp here, I'm going to have the same problem because this is the 7th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's always going to happen when you build a fifth on the 7th note of the scale. It's just one of those weird things. You have to build a fifth from in the key of the fifth. So when we do it in B and we apply the key of B to making a fifth, it ends up on F sharp. But when we do it in the key of C and count all the way up to B, we end up, when we do it in the key of C and count from B to F, we end up with an F natural because F sharp is not in the key of C, right? The key of C is only white notes. So F sharp doesn't exist. So the correct note that is a perfect fifth in the key of C isn't in there. So we end up with a note that is not perfect. And again, that's going to happen on the 7th scale degree only. So I know that's a little confusing. When we start to build chords, you might see how that comes up and the way that we deal with it. The 7th tone of a scale is, generally speaking, the most dangerous in terms of working with it either as a single note or as a chord. So we just have to watch out for that and treat it a little differently when we do use it. Just one of those things to keep in mind for now. Okay, one last thing about fifths. Why do we care about fifths again? I want to remind you what I said at the beginning of this unit, which is that fifths have a very important role to play for a couple of reasons. One is that they usually sound good. 2 is that we need them to start building chords. 3 is that they are the single most powerful note that leads us back home. Now, what I mean by that is when I play the 5th note of a scale, it has a tendency to it. It has a tendency to make us want to feel the tonic. So this is a gesture. It is a way to end a piece is to go 5, 1 is something that people that write music have been doing for literally centuries. This is Strauss' Allsprach Zarathustra. This is a classical piece, but you've heard the opening of this piece in many things. You've heard it in a lot of different movies. I think Elvis used to walk out on stage to this. You've heard this before, so let's just listen really quick. Okay, so that opening gesture, let's figure out what we were hearing there. Let's get rid of this. So let's assume we're in the key of C, because we are. I just happen to know. So the notes we heard for that opening gesture were C, G, a fifth, and then C, another C. And then we heard, and we landed on, so we heard E, D sharp. So D sharp's not in the key, but that's okay. We'll deal with that later. The main thing we heard was C, G, C. So let's hear what that sounds like in context. Right? That's the main melody. So this pattern of just C, G, C is just this very heroic sound that we like to use for stuff. Okay, one last thing is that whenever you look at a lot of different instruments, not all instruments, but like string instruments, like not guitars, but violins and cellos and violas and things like that, those strings are tuned in fifths. So this is a note, and this is their next open string. That's how their strings are tuned, by fifths. So a C, a fifth higher is G, G a fifth higher is D, etc. They're not actually tuned like that. The low one of a violin is G, D, and then an A, and then an E. So they're tuned in fifths like that. So this would be each open string of a violin, for example. And the reason that they're tuned in fifths is because we just like fifths so much that these instruments were built to be able to just be fifth machines. I mean, obviously they can do way more than that, but that sound of the big fifth is just built into a lot of instruments. So that's why the fifth is a very important interval. Okay, let's move on and talk about more intervals. In our next big unit, we're going to talk about more things about keys, and we're going to focus on the third, which is a new interval for us. And it's going to lead us to building our first chords, because once we have the third, we can put that together with a fifth and then a root note, and we have chords. Chord liftoff. So let's dive into that next.